When in a redwood grove like I am now in Joaquin Miller Park in Oakland, California, you might notice a pattern in the trees. It's not long lines of evenly spaced trees like you'd see in a plantation, but rather something more from a natural source. This pattern is a circle of redwood trees called a fairy ring. Why do they form? For when there is a pattern, there is almost certainly a source. In this fairy ring, you can see some of the traces which led to these forming. This stump comes from a tree that was cut down when this area was logged about 180 years ago. It's pretty impressive that it still survives today. I know it certainly would not back in Vermont. These old trees were much larger than the trees we see in this park today. Some of them were 30 feet across in diameter. Though some large trees certainly still do exist, and not just in the definitively preserved areas. You can find them in random redwood groves all over. These still decently sized trees grew up around the edges of where that stump was, and now form the fairy ring. Looking at the bases of these trees, and there's better examples elsewhere, you can see that there's sprouts coming up around the bases of these current trees, at least in areas where they haven't been all trampled down by humans. If these current trees were felled, these new sprouts would have the potential to form their own fairy ring. I did not notice the fairy rings until someone pointed them out to me. Part of this is that fairy rings are not the only way redwoods are found. They are also quite frequently found as randomly scattered trees. This is because reproducing from the sprouts coming from their base and turning into fairy rings is not the only way redwoods reproduce. And certainly also that fairy rings, when they're found, like sometimes they seem like circles and sometimes it's really hard to tell that they once were a fairy ring because only one or two trees still survive. In addition to fairy rings, redwoods have their cones and the seeds inside to reproduce. It's actually not that uncommon for plants to have multiple ways to propagate. In our raspberry patch at home, we are constantly having to remove little raspberry sprouts that have spread via roots into other areas of the garden that we want reserved for other plants. It makes sense. Having multiple ways to propagate means that if one method isn't working in a particular area or condition, then the other ones can continue to let that plant survive and thrive.